right. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today, everyone. My name is Maurice Russell with Sony Canada, and joining me today is John Banovich. John is an award-winning director, cinematographer with a burning passion in wildlife, right, John?
Absolutely.
So John's presentation today is about diversity, and diversity is our strength. So I believe John at some point will go into some videos and show some of the work that he's done. And I'm quite sure John is going to use every camera in Sony's arsenal. But John, I'll turn it over to you, and we welcome your questions, your interaction. And questions can be, you can avoid, ask a question at the end of the presentation. So John, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mo. And thank you to Sony for inviting me, everybody. Wanted to recognize what Mo was saying, that yes, I have worked, I'm pretty sure, with almost every single camera that Sony has developed. And not just the Sony cameras, but lenses and audio, a variety of Sony products. And we'll get into that in my discussion today. But thank you very much, Sony. And the subject of our presentation today is diversity. And I'm going to approach this from two different ways. The first way, of course, is Sony and the value of the Sony product line, and why, for me, especially with the cinema equipment, why that diversity is paramount. And of course, I don't just film wildlife. I film features and series and documentaries, but wildlife is a really big component of all that. It's sort of an area that I've been focused on for more than 25 years. I've had a very fortunate experience in my life to through the work that I do, to be able to travel every province and territory in this country, and in pretty much every season in every province and every territory. And that in it to itself is an amazing adventure. The diversity of our country and the people, the animals, the landscape, the different environments has been very fulfilling for me. It's a reward that, as much as I'd love to get an Oscar, I feel in many respects I already have my Oscar, and that's what Canada's given me. So very grateful to that. So let's get into it. Oh, hang on. It was working. There we go. So as I mentioned, it's, Sony offers a very diverse, very robust product line. What I mean by that is that they've got everything from the Cine Alta, Venice and Venice 2, right down to, to these guys, to their smartphones, and Sony's pushing that boundary. Their product is always leading edge, but it's not leading edge, for me at least anyways. It's not leading edge where they're trying, gimmicky features. Sony really does listen to us, the filmmakers, the creators. They really do listen to us. They respond, I found, very well to our feedback and our insights, to provide products in each one of their categories. And that's quite valuable. And for me, my experience with the Sony product, especially more recently, the Venice to Venice 2, is that the features that come with these products, those features don't always rise to the surface immediately. Sometimes it takes me time and my crew time to find all the features, to benefit from all the features. And that's awesome. It's kind of like a Christmas 6 months later and another Christmas a year later. And of course, with the different firmware upgrades, because that's another big plus for me, is there's a constant firmware upgrades. So that's really important, that, Sony is engaged. They don't come up with a new physical camera every 6 months or a year. They come up with new firmware, and I can keep the camera, and I can invest wisely, and I can use that technology for a long time. So it is a good investment, literally. I don't lose any of my investment with the Sony products ever. And to that effect, we could talk about a lot of the accessories, like lenses, for example. I absolutely am thrilled that Sony not only makes incredible glass and light. I mean, some of these telephoto lenses, the 400 and 600, are light comparatively to the competitors' equivalent lenses. although I understand that, that's bound to change. But the other aspect of the Sony glass is that the E-mount lenses work on everything. They work on all the Venice cameras. They work all the way down the product line into the FX series and the Alpha series. So one set of lenses, and that's huge for someone like me who's doing wildlife. Why bring two lenses when I can have one that will work on all the cameras, all the bodies, and save space, save weight, and ultimately, some hard decisions have to be made when we're getting into canoes or rafts or helicopters or small planes, even 4x4s or quads. Some hard decisions have to be made. What do I bring and what do I leave behind? So that's really important. The other component to having a set of lenses that's going to work across the product line is that the color rendering that the glass has is consistent. So I'm using my 400, for example, my G Master 400 on a Venice, and then I'm using it on the FX9 or the FX6. I can expect with some level of predictability what that color rendering is going to look like, what the glass color is going to create for me. And that's incredibly valuable, right? And take some of the guesswork out of it. Also, the other aspect of all this is the consistency of the S-Log3. Boy, do I love S-Log3. I'm going to show you guys a little 2-minute trailer I put together late last night. I stayed up and edited something together for today's presentation, because it's an opportunity for us to look at exactly what I'm talking about here. The primary camera was the Venice, but there's footage integrated in there from the F55, from the Alpha 1, from the A7S Mark III, and a variety of their G and G Master lenses. And the S-Log3 is, again, very predictable. It allows me some uniformity across the board. I can go into DaVinci Resolve and, not that I'm going to pretend to be a professional color grader or editor, but, I can do some simple grading and some simple editing, relatively easy, and navigate through that process. And a big part of that is with the file formats and with the ability to capture in S-Log. So, yes, the Venice 2 is out. I'm absolutely thrilled and excited and can't wait to be working with it here in the near future. I love the fact that the Venice 2, which is great to see that Sony again is listening to our industry, but the Venice 2 now has the integrated AXS cards on board, that they're forward and backward compatible. So the old Venice sensors can be shared between the old generation, new generation, that the cards can be shared, because let's face it, the ASX cards are not cheap, and even the 2.4 and 4.8 cards, it's nice that we can still use those. That's awesome. I love the fact that I can record 5.8K in an S35, and I'm able to take my 50-1000 lens, the ultimate zoom, and which is a wildlife zoom. It's my staple lens, and great that I can put that in action on the Venice 2, and meanwhile on the old Venice or on my FX9 or one of the Alpha cameras, I can have all of my e-glass and share that between the different cameras, because a lot of wildlife, as you probably know out there, that those of you who film natural history or film series or film features for that matter, it's never a one camera deal. With wildlife, if I can afford it, and we have the manpower for it, I want to have more than one camera. And you'll see some pictures here where I've rigged up 2 cameras stacked, or 2 cameras side by side, or I'll have multiple cameras even if I'm the only one operating them. And I can walk through that in a few minutes. So that integration is really, really important for me, how I use this product to achieve the results. Right. And that's what it's all about, whether it's a feature, series, documentary. It's all about how do we use these tools to achieve the results, both as directors and as DPs. Heck, producers for that matter, right? We've got to deliver. There's an expectation from our distributors and broadcast licensees that we deliver. So that's really important. Some of the other technologies that I integrate, Sony technologies that I use, I'm going to touch on this briefly. Sony has a great little digital mic, the B1M. It's fantastic. It's replaced my old Sony QA75, which is a 3-foot. In fact, I've got it here. Turn around and there it is. This mic, and I love this mic, don't get me wrong, it's phenomenal, but it's big. So I'm going to pull it out here so you guys can have a quick look. This thing is massive. It's 3 feet long, and it's an amazing lens. In its time, it was incredible. However, if you're out there like I am many times by myself, filming wildlife, it can be pretty cumbersome. So it is a very much unidirectional mic using older technology, but the new digital mic that Sony's got out for a fraction of the cost is about 90% of what this mic can do. The accuracy of that little tiny mic is incredible. And I'm using it now for interviews. In some cases, having a lav, my Sony Diversity lav is my backup mic, really, because the quality of that mic is phenomenal for what it can do, especially on a smaller camera body. But it's digital, of course. So with the Alpha series, plug it in and you don't worry about it. It's a very simple system. Okay, there we go. Just in case you're wondering, hey, John, do you really own all those Sony cameras? Well, this is an older picture. So, it's my family's grown since then, shall we say. The Venice FX9, the A7S Mark III, and the Alpha 1. And most of that is Sony glass, with the exception of what's on the Venice there. But, again, just demonstrating the versatility of the PL and E-mount options. Really glad, by the way, to see that the new Venice 2 has the spring retained Allen screws on the PL mount. Thank you. Can't tell you. One of those goes missing, and you're in the bush, and okay, nobody move, nobody step anywhere, everybody on your knees. Look, it's somewhere here in like there's a great example right there where I'm in a coastal forest bed, and you can see the florist is covered in little needles and twigs. Imagine losing one of those screws down there. Yeah, great way to spend the day. Definitely deserving of a cold beer afterwards. So the new technologies we brushed on this a little bit, how the new technologies are both forward and backward compatible, and I think that's so important. I mean, how many of you have bought a system, and I've been there myself, not recently, thank you, Sony, but where you buy a system and you find out 6 months down the road that there's a new model out. And after a year or two, there aren't any upgrades for it, and that your hardware is no longer compatible with the second or third generation that's come out since in that short period of time. Frustrating, right? I mean, I know I was, and quite disheartening. And it's like, okay, let's go to the my finance institution and ask for another loan. Ouch. And trying to convince them, well, hey, this one's going to make money. I know the last one did, and I didn't quite repay it, but this one will. Ouch. So this is a huge bonus for me with the Sony products. It's a really big attraction. And as I mentioned earlier, the constant firmware upgrades, they just keep opening up more features and providing a more robust camera. It's like I mentioned, it's Christmas every 6 months. Awesome. Even going from the F55 to the Venice, and we crossed over with the ASX R7, and it linked the two together quite nicely, and being able to work with the S/X and moving that into the initial Venice. And so you're never left behind, right? Sony doesn't leave a man behind, or a woman. So kudos to Sony again for that. That's been a wonderful relationship that I count on, right? And I need to. And it's interesting for me how, the Venice has really developed into its own in our industry. Um, and that's exactly it. It's sought after. With a Venice right now, for example, out here on the West Coast, you could rent it every day of the week. You could rent it to the point where you don't even use it yourself. They're they're hugely popular. It took a little while to catch on. It took 2-3 years for it to catch on, but when it did, it's it's the number one camera system, and everybody, and I mean, I'm even fielding calls for the Venice. Uh, so yeah, this is what we're talking about a little bit earlier. The Venice and how it integrated into the F-55, and now of course the Venice 2 moving forward. Paralleling to the FX series, the Alpha series. Um, I'm going to talk a little bit about how all of this applies to this 2-minute trailer that I just put together. Because hearing me talk the whole time is probably pretty boring. So I'm going to move through this a little quicker. But in this piece that I'm going to show you guys, I want you to think about all of the cameras that came together to provide this little 2-minute trailer, because this is something that's been ongoing now for a couple of years. Well, even more than that. I've got footage in there from the Venice, from the F-55, from the Alpha 1, from the A7S Mark III. Some lenses are PL mount. Most of them are E mount, Sony G and G Master. I'm capturing in a 24p and a 30p base. Not everything is 30p. I'm capturing in 16:9 and 17:9 because, of course, UHD. The 3.8 sometimes limits us, and as well as the 239. And I know some people go, huh, what? But the 239 has some advantages. And again, I'm happy to discuss that later. And I'm recording in XOCN and XAVC, S-Log3 when I have the opportunity. Always S-Log3. The video I'm going to show you is outputted at 1080p. So it's down-resed, and it's H.264 compression, so not anywhere near the level of quality that it started out as. Here we go.
Canada offers something very special and unique. Our bears. From the Atlantic to the Pacific to the Arctic Sea, we have a very large range and variety of species. And it's important for us to understand how to coexist with these gentle beasts.
I really appreciate that moment and regard that moment as a blessing. For me to be able to witness a magnificent animal.
They don't have a lot of experience with bears, and they want to get a great picture, and they unknowingly put themselves at risk by trying to get close, and in the end we can habituate those bears.
With farmers or ranchers, if there's grizzly bears in that area and you're checking the calves at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, the risk is very much real to wander out and encounter a grizzly bear.
So that kind of is where that hibernation and the need to gather calories starts to interact with people. So their drive is to really put on those fat stores. Working across silos and across agencies is really what we need for grizzly bear and black bear conservation, and especially in landscapes like we're in today. So, we're talking about land that is owned federally, provincially, by resource extraction companies, by cities, and is traditional homelands of Indigenous peoples.
Being bear smart, being bear aware really does make a big difference when you're considering bear safety.
And so dive right into it. So, I'm recording and capturing that's from one of the interviews that I did. I've got the camera stacked there, the FX9 on the bottom, and I believe that's the A7S Mark III on top. And on the other side, of course, is the Venice. And I'm recording in crazy conditions. So, it's not always ideal. The light isn't always ideal. The weather isn't always ideal. So having an arsenal of cameras affords me the ability of recording, say, in low light. When the Venice at 2500 or the Venice 2 at 3200, when it starts to run out of light, the A7S Mark III is a great supplementary tool to have on standby. Or if I'm going to put some stills down, because a lot of time I'm capturing still images along with the cinema material. So having the Alpha 1 at my disposal, or the R Mark IV, R Mark III, having those at my disposal to put down some images is really important. So dual purpose, right? That's a big part of it. Here's sort of a typical Venice setup that I would typically run. The Venice with my 600, the 1.4 extender, the Sony boom on there, or sorry, the Sony shotgun, and then that's the Xperia Pro 1 on top. Great tool because it's a monitor. It's a monitor, and also I use it remotely. I'll tether using Wi-Fi a lot of times to the cameras, especially if I need to get closer to an animal and there's a level of security, compromise of security. Then I can walk away from the camera. These cameras are camouflaged. I have different types of camouflaging that I use, and I don't have to be on the camera. Or in the case of minus 55 or minus 60, park the camera. Yes, it's a static shot, but again, you choose your lenses and you choose your shots. So some advantages there. There's a closer version of it. It makes for a little bit of weight. It's nice to have crew. It's really nice to have crew. When you're getting over 100 pounds worth of package, and you're always bringing, in my case, I'm always bringing multiple batteries because you go through them. That's the nature of being out there. So sorry guys, keeping an eye on the time here. Myself and a fellow CSC DP, we did a side-by-side comparison sort of at the beginning of all the lockdowns a little while ago. And we compared the Venice at that time, I believe it was version 5.0, it just come out, the firmware. And we compared it to the sort of closest competitors with full frame capabilities. And, if you light everything nicely in post, DCI, and we're looking at a properly calibrated monitor, large monitor, and able to run it through a DaVinci Resolve, and we're getting good results in all of them. Where it became quite apparent was when we started pushing the image, underexposing and overexposing. And that's where the Venice did really well. And we intentionally underlit our samples, our sample set, and our talent intentionally underlit it. And going to the 2500 was a huge plus. That's where the Venice completely stood out from everything else. And with wildlife, I mean, I can speak volumes about this, having that dual ISO and having the latitude to go 2-3 stops down into the blacks is phenomenal. And my eye, it just, even with the monitors that I'm bringing with me, I'm still not seeing the level of detail that I'm getting back in post on a large calibrated monitor. That's exciting, right? I mean, I'm sure many of you have been in that spot where you think, oh man, can I recover this? Can I recover the shadows? Can I recover the highlights? Can I get that hit back? And it's one thing to have, 2 40-foot longs with lighting and lots of Jennies and a big crew. It's another thing when, you're working with nothing other than what Mother Nature gives you. So this is just yes, I used the Venice for an interview. I did. And you'll see why in a minute.
I mean, one sort of bizarre or
So this is
it's not really
ungraded,
that bizarre.
right coming out of the
Sorry,
camera, the
yeah.
XOCN.
One
We're
situation
on
that I've
location,
had
very
with
remote
bears was
area,
my
doing
first
interview
time ever
with
seeing a grizzly bear.
a
So
bear
I was sort of one of
biologist.
those people that grew up outside of the range of grizzly bears. I didn't have a lot of experience with bears. I mean, one
And there's just a quick grade,
bizarre,
right? It's a
or,
one pass,
it's not really that bizarre.
quick
Maybe I'll
10,
start again.
15-minute grade.
One situation that I've had with bears was my first time ever seeing a grizzly bear. So I was sort of one of those people that
And
grew
I
up
just love the
outside
way
of the range
that
of
I was
grizzly
able
bears.
with
I
the
didn't have
Venice
a lot
just
of
to be able to
experience with
control
bears.
the soft fall off on his shoulders, you know, the soft fill on his face. It's a nice soft interview light. It's not hard punchy light. It's a nice soft source. And I'm out there with the Venice by myself. I've also got about on a 45 off to this side over here. Sorry, that way. Over here, I've also got a my Alpha 1 set up as a B camera. And the audio, by the way, that's that mic I was telling you about. I didn't bother putting a lab on them. I don't like the look of labs. And if you don't have a sound crew with you, it does an amazing job. So yeah, the cinema systems for me, at least anyways, they've always been very reliable. I compare it to like a Honda or Toyota. That legacy is incredible because my FD5, for example, and I'm not there yet with the Venice because it just hasn't been around that long, but the F55, 7 years old, you know, crazy hours on it and dragging that thing everywhere in brutal conditions. And I mean, it's the same with the Venice. I've taken that thing into places that, you know, you wouldn't want to take electronics. You know, some nighttime stuff here with the Venice a couple of years ago, getting into the, you know, the minus 35, minus 40 degree up north temperatures, doing crazy aurora borealis with it, doing it live. So no time lapse, right? I mean, somewhere in there, I've got one of the Alpha cameras set up doing time lapse, but I'm recording real time on the Venice, and it's insane. It just puts up with that kind of abuse. Here's another one, you know, filming bears on the coast. I mean, and I don't know if you guys have heard, but it rains out here. Yeah. In BC, we get rain. I'm sure the news is, you know, out east they're talking about the need for one of those silver things back there, boats. You know, I've got a canoe, so I think I'm okay. But no joking aside, it does rain a lot out here, and that's the Venice with the 600, I think, on it. That could be the 400. I'm not sure because it's covered up. But, you know, living for weeks at a time on a boat in remote parts of the Great Bear Rainforest and filming in just crazy rain. You know, I won't say which brand, but, you know, in the past, we've had other brands of cameras out there on projects that have shut down. It's too wet, it's too cold, it's too hot, it's too dusty, whatever. They're finicky and they shut down. Not the Venice. Never. And I mean, it's on boats. It's, you know, being handled for hours, days at a time on a little boat like that, you know, pounding through up rivers and pounding over the ocean and in 4x4s and on helicopters, and then out, you know, doors off a little Cessna 172 sticking out the, you know, the hole in the side of a Cessna to film whales. I mean, you know, we just take the camera to great, you know, lengths. I mean, it gets used. So wrapping it up, I want to talk, and that's perfect timing. I want to talk a little bit about you know, diversity and how our industry has become quite diverse. I'm sure, you know, all of you out there are aware of the diversity of Sony products. My opening shot, by the way, was a shot of a northern black bear with woodland bison. And I thought that was interesting because it sort of shows, again, the diversity of wildlife and how the wildlife can coexist with each other. You would think that the bear would, you know, go after the young calves, but they, you know, there's an understanding, sort of a natural order, if you will. Sony is very much the same way. They're very diverse range of products, but more importantly, they're quick to embrace this diversity. Some of you know, who know me well, that I'm a person with disabilities, and you know, I've definitely had my challenges, especially doing the kind of work that I do, and had to develop workarounds. I sit on a number of committees, diversity and inclusion committees, representing that voice, the voice of people with disabilities. And it isn't always physical. Sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's mental. But we have an industry where people with diversities can bring their creative abilities, their skills, and bring their experiences as well. So we're assets. People with this are assets. We're part of this, very diverse industry we're in. And Sony is a big part of that equation. My hat's off to Sony for embracing it and for understanding and supporting it. And that is the end of my very expedient half-hour presentation. Thank you.
Fantastic, John. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Great conversation, great topic there, and great work, man. It was awesome footage you showed there. I got a question for you, John. One of the first questions, I guess. You're most of the time you're by yourself. You're one-man show. How does equipment enable you to capture those amazing footage when you're up in the wilderness by yourself? How do you work? What's a workaround for you in some cases? And how does equipment contribute to you being able to be so nimble?
Yeah, a great question, because I used to think about, how I'm going to do this myself. Multiple cameras, multiple locations. This little Sony here. This is another tool that I use. So having the ability to set up cameras, different angles at different locations, being able to tie them all together to one device and being able to see them on one device via Wi-Fi, that helps. So the technology absolutely does lend itself to that creativity, lends itself to being able to accomplish these tasks.
Right. And my other question, John, is when it comes to some of the technology included in the cameras, for example, S-Cinetone, S-Log3, are those conducive to your workflow and to get a similar look across the board, to help you to get a similar look across the board?
Absolutely. So S-Log3 is kind of my staple safe place because I can run it on all the systems. The S-Cinetone, fantastic. If you're going to do a quick interview, for example, or run and gun, quick or a fast turnaround in terms of editing, post and output. That's awesome. And it does exist on my Alpha 1, my FX series cameras, and my A7S Mark III. So I can quickly, as long as I'm using similar lenses and I'm using same or similar white, I shouldn't say the same, but similar white balance within the context of that space, I can get very quick results. Where it does become a challenge is if you're working with the Venice or the Venice 2 or the F55, there you have to kind of step outside a little bit. And in those situations, I'll fall back on the S-Log3 for sure, or a variation of the S-Log3.
Thanks, John. I'm sure we're looking forward to getting your hands on the Venice 2 in the next little while.
Absolutely. That Venice 2, of course, drooling over here constantly. There's a new post almost every hour, somebody out there with some more footage that they're sharing. And I can assure you that what I'm going to be doing with the Venice 2 will be taking it places that, people don't typically take cameras in conditions where you wouldn't typically find electronics. So, I'm very confident with the Sony product line. I've never had an issue with any of the cameras I've owned for decades now. So there's no concern on my end, none.
Perfect. Yeah, that'll be good for you, John. It's lighter, a little bit less weight, with smaller. So it lends well to your one-man arm. I'm not sure if there are any questions from the audience. Anyone want to ask any questions to John? It's a great opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the Venice 2, the fact that it is slightly lighter and slightly smaller because the R7 is now integrated. That's awesome to see. One of the things I enjoyed about the F55 was its compact size and its weight. And now we're moving back towards that again. That is a huge accomplishment. And for me, it's a welcome benefit.
Absolutely, John. Well, I'm not sure if there are any other questions. If there are no more questions, then John, I think we can probably wrap up the presentation. I want to thank everyone for participating in this presentation. Thank you, John, for sharing your experience and your expertise and your adventure with us. And if you do have questions, feel free to reach out, or you can type it in the chat quickly. Alternatively, for later on, you can reach out to the Vistex sales team as well, or myself, or any one of the Sony team members, or also check out our booth. We got some fantastic information on the Sony booth, some great videos, the new cameras are there. Feel free to take a look, and thanks everyone again for spending some time with us.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mo.
Thanks everyone.